All right, let's talk about OPEX gain and how to improve that. We do want to remember that in order to improve this exact concept of improvement on the bike, you have to try to remember back where this comes from and what we're trying to do here. So in this energy system, remember, you're trying to get really good at the repeatable expression of releasing energy. Think about that. Right? When we did the testing and when we just talked about energy systems in general, you could see, and you remember where G sat on the power time curve. It's the really high power output portion, right? So what we're actually trying to do when we train OPEX gain is to get better, I'll repeat, at maximal, repeatable expression of getting rid of energy. Because remember what this energy system is, what's with the T at the end of EST, energy system, training. So you're trying to, with training, you're trying to get better at said energy system. Okay? EST doesn't stand for energy system testing. The testing we previously talked about, how to get there as hard as possible within a 10-second time frame for wattage as a score. If we want to get better at that energy system, I'm hoping you're starting to understand that you're not doing a true maximal testing effort every time. You're now trying to train the characteristics of what's inside of that energy system, which is, I'll say it again, repeatable expression of releasing energy. Repeatable expression of releasing energy. How we get there? Well, we do know, based upon what I talked about on the history and the kinematics, that there's some limitations in us doing work on this. The main limitation is where you go to determine how to improve it. The main limitation of someone improving OPEX gain or getting to a max value of OPEX gain is their strength. Your absolute and relative strength has a large part to play in how well you perform in OPEX gain testing and OPEX gain training. Okay? So in simple terms, strength dictates how well you will perform in gain on the assault bike. So put it in a couple of different buckets. Really super strong, relatively super strong people and absolutely strong individuals. Right? To give you an idea, you're just a human that's 170 pounds and you deadlift 3 times your body weight. Okay? That's an absolute and relatively really strong individual. Not just for the movement, just think about it overall, just strength, right? That will allow that person to express gain more effectively. So you can't have the expression of or the testing of gain if you're not strong enough. So the greatest thing around this with the assault bike, you could still practice it, you can still train it, but you have to know where you sit in terms of these standards, which I'll talk about in testing, into training, into retesting, so you can figure out if it's actually worthwhile doing all your work, really hard intervals on the bike, or maybe you just need to get stronger. And then maybe as you get stronger over time, you can now express gain more effectively. I hope that makes sense. So you got to have a base level of strength in order for you to perform gain. Before moving on, I'll give you some kind of things you can think about that could be outside of your realm or could be very easy for you. Okay? Back squatting your body weight and doing 3 strict pull-ups. That would be a starting point for a conversation on, am I actually strong enough to participate in the production of OPEX gain? Okay? Back squat body weight, 3 strict pull-ups. Those are absolute and relative scores that could give you a starting point to go after. Now, if you are really concerned around that being a value, it should motivate you and inspire you and not deter you from trying to get better at OPEX gain. Okay? And with you turning your back on that, if we want to go down that road, if you're turning your back on it, you're going to remove the possibility of you getting stronger over time. There has to be some standards in place in order for the expression, because the reality is this is a machine and requires force and force production. Okay? And the last thing I want is for people to practice 10 seconds really hard, resting for a minute 50, doing it multiple times, and just being like, that's a waste of time. But you know why you're not being able to get the great intention out of the session? You're not strong enough. So get stronger and then you can express OPEX gain more effectively. Okay? There's also a specific strength, what we call bike strength, that can lead you into performing the gain test and the gain training more effectively. Okay? Let's have an example when individuals start and they're just absolutely strong and they've never seen this piece of equipment before, they will still have a relatively good score, right? But if you take 50 of those people and then 50 other people who are the same strength but have years of experience on this, their expression of gain on the bike is better. Better absolutely, because of the skill involved of being on the bike. Okay? So this should also make you recognize the importance when we talk about repetition and progression. You should see that repetition and volume can actually lead to improvements of actual OPEX gain on the assault bike, because you will get what's called bike strong. And we should hashtag that and share it amongst assault bike users, because it's a really great thing that will tie people into trying to get strong on the bike and strong enough on the bike. Okay? When we talk about test, train, retest, if you remember when we tested this, it's an all-out effort for maximum wattage in the period of time. And a standard that you should look at for what you want to get as what would be called like a metabolic balance scenario to determine how well you sit in regards to gain, pain, and sustain in balance for yourself, as well as where you sit in gain, pain, and sustain in balance for tens of thousands of other humans that will do it, is 10 times your body weight in pounds. So if you're 150 pounds, to be able to get to 1,500 watts as a maximum in the period of time on the bike would be a great standard to search for. So a great standard to search for. And we give only that one and not like, well, if you score here, you're at the 80th percentile. If you score here, you're at the 50th percentile. There's not enough data and there's not enough experiences of that to actually say some truths in what you should hit there. It's largely based upon philosophical ideas on what people should express based upon what they can express. As I said, I'm put together being able to do shit really quickly for 5 seconds, painful shit for 3 minutes, and sustain for hours. I'm put together to do that. Okay? So on the bike, you want to get some idea as to where you sit when you want to do stuff that's really fast and intense for a very small period of time. Why? You want to see how that compares to pain and sustain scores, so you can eloquently draw up what you should be focusing on in your training program. Because metabolic balance should be the reason why you're doing your training. And just think about that. If you're super good at sustain and you're horrible at pain and gain, if all you did was sustain for the rest of your life, it'll still be okay, but you're not becoming well-rounded, right? You're not going after the things that really round you out in terms of what you're capable of expressing. Okay? So when you test, you know what that is. We've already discussed that in testing. Max wattage in 10 seconds, right? Your goal should be to try to work towards getting 10 times your body weight in pounds as a standard that you can look at. So if you do the test, you're 155 pounds, right? And you score 1,100, right? That's nowhere near the maximum, right? But it's almost like me saying, you should do 3 strict pull-ups. All of a sudden you hang on the bar and you fall off. You can't even do 1. Don't let that deter you. It should be motivation around you saying, I need to do whatever is necessary to round myself out so I can do 3 pull-ups over time. That may take 2 years, may take 8 years, but you still have to work towards that. Why? So you can round yourself out, be more well-rounded. Let's say you're 155 pounds and you put out 2,100 watts. Now what are you looking at, right? You're probably above the maximum standard of output. And we'll see down the road, maybe then you suck at pain and that you really suck at sustain. So now where does this person need to work? On getting stronger? No. They need to work on expression of pain, should they wish to do it, or worrying about sustainability and trying to get better at that, which we'll get to. As you put OPEX gain in practice, we have to have a testing scenario, which I just told you what it's like and what you should be shooting for as a standard. You're going to have an intervention of training. And because I know everyone's going to be watching this and those just participating in fitness, you're not all going to be doing all the same program and, everyone's not doing that same templated idea, right? So you will have some form of intervention of training, which I will discuss about how to do it, the kind of effort that should be inside of each set and session, as well as how to progress it really simply. but you have to say that you want to take a period of time. I'll give you an idea of like 4 to 6 weeks of a concept. So you can at least have a strategy in place, put some intervening training in spot, and then come back and retest it, right? Go back and do the retest of the maximum wattage in 10 seconds. And then that should be some truths in there. You've either practiced through repetition and you've gotten bike strong, you've gotten stronger with your resistance training, so you've gotten overall strong. And because of those reps in practice, I would hope, back to that story, that 155-pound person who had 1,100 watts now does 1,250. Right, do you see that? They're inching towards what I'd given you as an absolute standard for where you want to be on top of that. So I'll just write here as a reminder for individuals, and you'll just note it as you go back and look at the video, 10 times body weight in pounds towards what that wattage would be. Just as a somewhat of a loose, concept of a standard you can get to. Okay, so that concept should be in stone now. Test, train, retest. And now what is retesting? It's actually a test scenario again. And then where do you go after that? You train again. Implementation of a strategy, you come back, you retest over, okay? Inside the training, make it really simple. It's 10 seconds on, 1 minute and 50 seconds off. The reason for this, 2 things. This fits really well to physiological standards of expression of power and the recovery needed from that for most humans. Secondly, it fits in a 2-minute time frame beautifully. So for implementation, for a 2-minute countdown, for intervals on the bike, there's so many reasons why 10 seconds and 150 work together beautifully, okay? And for those of you who do program design, you'll certainly appreciate that. And also possibly being in a class or designing program for someone from remote or in person, getting someone to understand it, this really makes sense, okay? So they're going to go 10 seconds on with a hard effort, 1 minute 50 seconds off, and you'll do it a certain number of repetitive times. This is now training of OPEX gain. When we discuss effort that's inside, I'll refer back to the difference between testing and training. Testing is maximal guns blazing, right? It's all out. When I do training, it has to be just less than all out, right? So in terminology, when we would prescribe it to people, we would use this number, right? Why 97? It's got nothing to do with heart rate. It's got nothing to do with 97% of the maximal power output for wattage. It's got nothing to do with that. It's a nebulous term to allow people to recognize, what is it? It's not 100%. See the difference there? So if you're at 100 in perception, you're testing. If you're at 97, you're training. I hope that makes sense. So the effort that's inside of each of these 10-second pieces, right, that you're going to do of work is 97%. Beep. That's the sound of the assault bike, right? You started, 10 seconds. It's over. Rest 1 minute 50, repeat, okay? Which we'll talk about progression in a little bit. But the concept of what's inside that 10 seconds, you should say to yourself, that was not like the max test that I did for 10 seconds. It was probably just less than. Just less than. How do you measure this? This still has to be a live time site of you looking at RPM average or the watts that you reached at the peak in that 10-second set, right? You still have to be very connected to what you see happening. I'll give you an example again, a person who scored 2,200 on the max wattage, right? That's what we saw on the screen, 2203. That was the max wattage, right? Now they're doing the sets, right? Turned on, 4 seconds in, 5 seconds in, 6 seconds in, they see 1850, right? 1850, 10 seconds, stop. Right? That's 97% in their perception of what's below what their max was. Do you see that? But that's the score that they have for that set. They'll rest 1 minute 50 and they'll do it again or attempt to do it again with the same perception at 97%. It would be way too easy and almost impossible for me to just say, if this is your max wattage, this is the percentage, calculate reverse engineer, that's what you should score. but it takes the human aspect around what's inside of perception and the work that you need to do for the training. Okay? So you need to take the responsibility of figuring out where you sit on that perception underneath your max. I'll make it real simple again. This is the max in testing. This is where you train. Multiple times. And when you train this multiple times, you're flirting with pushing threshold higher. You're doing reps to push threshold higher. And eventually over time when you retest, your brain will know, you combine true strength with bike strength and reps, your brain will know when you go back to do that, to the person who hit 2203 as a max, they hit 2340 on the max, the new test, right? Why? The brain is like, I know what I need to do, I've prepped, I got all the stuff inside, the characteristics are expressed, I go up, okay? Now, if you're beginning and just starting on this, then you will start with only 2 pieces of 10 seconds on and 150 off in terms of progression. So how to progress this? When you first begin it, now you know where you sit, right? You know what your max is, you know that you have to go just below that max, and you need to do it twice in the first session that you do. Okay, why twice? Because repeatability is the scoring that allows you to recognize that you're doing the training correctly. I'll say it again. Repeatability allows you to dictate if you're doing the actual training of the energy system correctly. I'll say it over and over with pain and sustain too. Repeatability is the measure. Not your feelings, not your heart rate, etc. Right? Think about that. The repeated actions of it. So back to my point of the example I'd given. Remember the person who hit 1850, right? They're going to hit 1850. They're going to rest a minute 50, which doesn't look like this, but you get the idea. And they're going to do another set, 1850. Boom, 2. Can they do more? Sure, they can do more. What am I recommending? You only do 2 the first day. Why? Because it allows your starting point to see what you can do from the first to the second and to see if you actually can be repeatable. If you do that on the first day and you can't repeat the second one, the session's over. That's called critical drop-off. If you can't repeat the sub-maximal repeated powerful efforts on your first training day, you have to wait 2 or 3 days, try it again, and try to get 2. Once you get 2, you can now try a third, etc. And it's as simple as that. The amount of sets that someone gets up to is largely functional based. Okay? We'll have it written in stone, you'll see in the notes. When I talk about the avatar, you'll see how we can lay it out, right? Because then, some people will be like, so you can do 80 sets of that? Yeah, you could do 80 sets, sure, okay? And if you can, great for you. You'll probably be a world champion on the on a power test around the world for OPEX Gain. But it's largely functional, right? Maybe this person only has 20 minutes to work with, right? Maybe this person has 60 minutes to work with, right? So I don't want to lay out exactly what the top end should be for it, but I am going to give you some context of it. Function dictates how many reps. But in the end, to be completely honest, I don't care. If they're all repeatable, then I know you're doing OPEX Gain a service. You're actually making it better each time you do it. So the only rule of thumb is that you start with 2, and then you build 1 set per workout as a progression. Get to a point where you feel like you're reaching, let's call it a functional max, right? You're getting up to 10 sets, 12. Maybe it's impressive that you did 25. Great, right? If they're all repeatable and they're all sub-max, by the time you get up to that many sets every couple of days and repeating that, when you come back and retest, your retest will dictate if you should be doing more sets. Think about that. The person got up to 25 sets and is Instagramming it and is so proud of it, and then they come back and do a retest and they're actually worse on max wattage. Do you see that? The system itself dictates what you should then do for your training. So that person hopefully is going to go back and maybe do less sets at a higher quality amount of submaximal work. Back to my point as an example, maybe they're doing 1910 average watts, right, per set as opposed to the 1850 example, and they come back and retest and now it's better. But they only got to 10 total sets in their training program. So that gives you an eloquent story of all the time, more sets is not always better. It's the retest that dictates what should be inside the training program. And it's the same idea. I don't give a shit if you're so proud about running for hours and hours. If we go back and do a 10K time trial and you're worse, right? It's the whole adage. You can run all you want, right? If you take 6 weeks, try and improve this aerobic volume in running, you come back and do the 10K as an example and you're worse, your training is useless, right? You do 6 weeks of training, half the volume, your 10K improves, now we got something. So that's called functional volume of the amount. Back to the basics. The effort, below maximum. The progression, start with 2 every couple of days, add sets, right? Over time, retest. Now you can start again with a new 10-second working piece, and then we'll put that into practice of an avatar so you can see how it fits on the back end of training or where it should fit in training and how you can put it together. Okay? Woof, that was OPEX Gain. A lot in there, but you know, that's a reflection of what OPEX Gain is like. You know, it's an expression of maximal work, and you're trying to get really good at expressing that rested energy, right? So what is it going to look like? Well, you got to get stronger first, and you got to be bike strong. Hashtag bike strong. You got to test. I gave you a standard you should look at. Body weight in pounds times 10 as a wattage, as a goal, right? Train the system, put an implementation in place. Retest, see if you're better. What does it look like? 10 seconds, is it all out? No, it's 97%. 150 rest, how many times you start with? 2. How many can you get to? It's up to you. What determines how many you should do? The retest. You come back and retest, you're not better, change your strategy as to how much you do and how much is inside the working set. That was OPEX Gain.